Hello, and welcome to the Lang Lines podcast. And on this week's episode, we are talking about Fragments. Now, Fragments is the prequel to JUDD, which was written by J.D. Toombs and Erica Scholes. Now, Fragments is a prequel novel to JUDD that runs about 98 pages. And this one is solo authored by J.D. Toombs. So it is more of a backstory on Sam, the main character from JUDD. Now, I've spoken with the author, and he said that it's not totally needed to understand the complete and total story in JUDD, but it is one that I do recommend because it adds a lot of new layers to characters, specifically Casey. Now, Casey in JUDD is Sam's best friend, but in Fragments you find out that they weren't always friends. Now, what were they, might you ask? Well, they used to be enemies. Now, what do I mean by enemies? Well, I mean that Casey used to bully JUDD. Or not JUDD, Sam. I apologize. Now, he used to bully Sam in, I think, two different schools is what it says in the book. And not only does this book offer a new look into the layers of characters such as Sam and Casey, it offers another look into why Sam is how he is. Because you don't really notice too many good things, I should say, happening right off the bat. Because it opens to a scene of a school event known as a fragment fight. So I'm assuming this is kind of like a wrestling match for us here in the realm of reality. But you can see right out of the gate, just right out of the opening, Sam doesn't feel too good about the school that he is in. Now, towards the bottom of page 1, like somewhere in the first couple of pages, he talks about how they announced the school for the fragment fight, and he says they announce it like there's some sort of pride to go with it. And this is a clear sign that Sam's not where he wants to be. And later on we learn that Aries High, which is the school from the first JUDD novel, Aries High is the school that Sam's always wanted to go to. Now, I'm sure that we can all relate to not wanting to be at the school that we are at. But it's something that we had to put up with, and we ended up a lot like Sam, I'm assuming. Grumpy, upset, everything. Now, later on in part 1, chapter 1, whatever you want to call it, Sam gets confronted by Casey and another character that's fairly new named Brick. Now, right away, Sam acknowledges Casey and talks about how Casey used to bully him in a past school. Now, quickly the fight, the bullying, whatever you want to call it, it's broken up by a teacher, and this is where we get to see more of the Sam that we're familiar with JUDD. And he's slightly confrontational with the teachers, which results in him, if I remember right, getting expelled from the school. But this novel, for the most part, it introduces a lot of things in a different light, like how the relationship with Sam and Casey's changed. It touches a lot on how Sam and Dre got to Ares High, which was they got expelled from what is the name of it? It's right here in my notes. The Sapphire City High. And well, it ends. I didn't write down about the ending. I apologize. It ends with it just ends with them taking their seats and talking about. It ends with Dre and Sam talking about how excited they are to go to Ares High. I do apologize about not having very many notes on this one, but it's a really short book, and it made it really hard to get notes. And if I were to review Fragments by itself, then we wouldn't really get too far with this episode, and it'd be shorter than every episode that I've ever done. But if I were to talk about the two books as a whole, I would say that the information in Fragments does add quite a bit to Judd, but I wouldn't say that Judd is explicitly needed to read Fragments, and Fragments is not necessarily needed for Judd, because I could see them both being fairly independent from each other as books. Now, I think the best information we got in Fragments is the fact that Casey and Sam were not always buddy-buddy like they are in Judd, and it adds more character development. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. It adds quite a bit of character development for the next novel, which would be Judd if we were to go by timeline. Now, the biggest thing is that Fragments isn't really treated as a superhero fantasy novel. It's more grounded and more in reality than Judd is. And I would say that this is attributed to it being more of a focus around Sam as a character and less about his changes about everything from how he is in Judd, like going from being powerless to losing everything and figuring out who he truly was. Now, I'm not going to do a spoiler-free episode on Fragments because it's such a short novel and where it's not really needed, I would say. I'm not going to walk as cautiously around it because while it is a good novel, it's really short and it doesn't contain as much characterization. It doesn't contain as much deep thought and detail as Judd did. It's just meant for like a quick skim read and to pump out information as fast as it possibly could. So I would say that Fragments isn't really worth doing a spoiler-free episode. Now, I dropped a few spoilers in here for Judd itself, but I'm going to put a warning on top of it, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not sorry. I mean, these books have been out for quite a bit. And they're probably some of my favorite books that I've read from the indie scene. I don't know what's going to be up next. It's probably going to be either Game of Thrones or I'll do a couple of episodes on Elevation or Later by Stephen King. One of those two. But I have a lot of books that I can do episodes on from here on out, and I can't promise that I'm going to keep the same consistent schedule that I have, but I do have quite a collection of already read books that I'm just going to go back through and do notes on. But you'll know because I'll publish the episodes, yada yada yada. But I'm going to use this as a way to make announcements since the book was so short and I didn't write down that much information on it. But I'm going to be on vacation by the time this episode comes out. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm trying to work on a podcast with another author. And hopefully we can get that off the ground here soon. And me being an author myself, I can't promise a consistent schedule after that podcast comes out. But this podcast, I'm hoping to do once a week, once every other week, twice a month, somewhere around there. And the other podcast that I'm working on with another author, it'll be once a month. And then we're going to hope on streaming a couple of episodes once a month towards the end of the month after we get a bit bigger. But on that podcast, we're going to hope to talk about the writing process, creative process, and we're going to hope to bring on some other authors. I'm sorry. But once I have more details about that, then I will announce it. But I hope everybody is well. I hope to see more views on my podcast, more views on my YouTube channel. But this is going to have a one-run advertisement like the others did. And I hope to see you guys again in another week. But everything's been a bit hectic for me right now. But keep reading and invest in books from more indie authors and self-published authors, because there's a lot of books in the self-published realm that are just as good, if not better, than traditionally published books. But everybody have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this episode even though it's so short. Peace out.